Welcome back. Those are the words that sort of spring to mind, Ronnie.
Oh, yes, indeed, yes. Yes, we just came back from the canteen on our new BBC escalator. A small step for mankind, but a giant leap for Ronnie Corbett.
And in a packed second half, we will be introducing you to the landlord of the Crown Pub in Aberdeen, which had its pile of pennies stolen tonight. Police said the thieves will not get very far, as both coins are marked.
Unfortunately, we've had to cancel our dance group, the Five Foolish Virgins, due to the Trades Descriptions Act. We found out that two of them were really quite clever.
But first, the latest as it breaks and when it breaks. Questions were asked in the House of Commons tonight about late postal deliveries when it emerged that St. Paul's epistle to the Corinthians only arrived last Thursday.
And news has just come in that the West Drayton man who kept himself awake for 17 years by snoring has at last found an answer. He's going to sleep in another room.
Mr. George Thrakes, the contractor, jailed last year for supplying millions of pounds worth of defective building materials to the government, escaped from Strangeways prison tonight when the front fell off.
But now a sketch set in a ball bearing factory, in which I play a man who loses his bearings.
And I play a man who loses his temper.
From different size pods, we differ in similar ways. We're like different apples from different size trees, or two peas from different size pods.
Hello, welcome to my front room. We need Michael Aspel and 100 red books tonight. It's all our lives. Let's meet the reasons we're here tonight. The two and only Ronnie Corbett and Ronnie Barker.
Thank you very much. Thank
And if you needed it, just to remind you why they're here tonight, just look at this.
Do me a favor, keep your eyes off her chest.
Hark who's talking, the Eastern raver. She's had more kicks than Georgie Best.
How dare you! I have been untrue, Claude, only twice since you took my hand. Once with the man from the Prue, Claude, and once with the Joe Lost Band. We couldn't fall off a ground. No one seemed to wear a frown. Now you're sad and tumble down, but you'll always be Camden Town, my Camden Town. You are home to me.
Did you need reminding? I'm here because I think I met Ronnie C in, 1960?
Yes,
working with Danny LaRue, and I met Ronnie B.
1966, I suppose, was it? Frost?
No, I met you in the Swan, the Wren pub in Leeds.
Did you?
Yes, when you were touring with Stanley Baxter.
Don't tell the wife.
How soon they... Let's meet the other friends.
Stanley Baxter.
Let's meet the other friends. Peter Pan himself over there. Terry Hughes returning from America after triumphs with Golden Girls and Third Rock from the Sun. First Two Ronnies producer, 6 series of the Two Rons. Next to him, Dick Vosborough, Rory Bremner, Bob Hope and everybody. Two Ronnies, obviously. Next to him, David Renwick and Need I Say, One Foot in the Grave, Jonathan Creek and Ronnie in the Chair. Over here, Peter Vincent, Sorry, and everything else, Peter. Good gracious me. His partner next to him, Ian Davidson, Sorry, Stitched to the Hip with Barry Humphries on many occasions, also Two Ronnies. And here, David Nobbs, Reggie Perrin, Bit of a Do, Two Ronnies. What can I tell you? Welcome them. Thank you. Now, there was life before the Two Ronnies. I think we would all have to agree that. And I want to turn to our two chief protagonists and say, what were you doing before you two met? Ronnie B, what were you doing?
Well, I was mainly in theatre. I started in repertory, weekly repertory, where you did a play every week. And I worked my way through to a fortnightly rep, where you did a play every fortnight. And then... and from that, I met a producer called Jimmy Gilbert on the stage. He was doing Stanley Baxter's, what was it called? On the Brighter Side. And I met Jimmy from that, and he brought me into television with Jimmy Edwards, a line or two in the Jimmy Edwards shows, and then he suggested me for The Frost, and I leave it to you, Ron.
Thank you very much. You know where I started, because we started together.
We did indeed.
At Winston's with Danny LaRue, and I played the hero to most of Danny LaRue's heroines. I was Othello to his Desdemona.
Indeed, yes. You've fed more people than Oxfam, Ron.
I was Pinkerton to his...
yes, indeed.
Oh, yes, it goes on and on forever. And so that's where I started. And David Frost was a customer at Winston's in those days.
When we were planning the Frost Report, Jimmy Gilbert, the producer, and I were searching for the right team, and he suggested Ronnie Barker, whom he'd already worked with on a couple of shows. And I suggested Ronnie Corbett, and indeed also John Cleese. Ronnie Corbett was appearing at that time with Danny LaRue in nightclubs in London, and I'd always thought he was absolutely terrific, and he had this great irrepressible twinkle as he delivered his lines and so on. And we had tea at the Ritz. What an appropriate thing to do. And we had tea at the Ritz, and I talked to him about the series and so on, and he was very excited by the idea. So that's how the team and the chemistry came together.
But what did you two make of each other when you first met?
We both sort of were very, very compatible straight away, because our backgrounds are sort of the same, really.
Yeah.
We're sort of grammar school boys. Ron was in rep and I was in concert parties and pantomimes, but basically we were theatricals, really. We were theatricals at heart, and we still...
And we stuck together because John Cleese and David were varsity types.
Do you want to see the first thing you ever did together?
Oh, I know.
Are you up for that?
Yes, let's have a look.
Good morning, Super.
Morning, wonderful. Little boy. Little children.
Quite short, that, wasn't it? The whole of Monty Python, which was yet to be,
Yes.
were around.
The Frost Report cast was a bit special because there were 3 performers who were new to me, certainly on television. I'd heard Ronnie Barker had been on radio shows and all that, but I'd never really seen these 3 together, and they made a wonderful combination. And as a writer, you knew that whatever you gave to this cast would come out the way, near as damn it, the way you wanted it to be done. And we were very fussy as writers then, and we'd been performers. We had performed ourselves in review and cabaret, so, you know, we sort of felt that comedy timing and comic timing and all that was very important. And delivering something to the Two Ronnies and to John was just a joy, because, you know, you just knew this was going to have a lovely spin on it that was just going to give it that little extra edge.
Men's minds often boggle at women.
My God, she's beautiful.
Yes, she's like a gazelle, isn't she?
And look at that hair, dark like raven's wings.
And that neck like a swan's.
Those eyes, soft and gentle.
It's like a doe's. And that voice, Charles, it's like a nightingale's in the summer evening.
And just look at her move, like a proud leopard in the jungle.
Yes. She's certainly going to make some lucky man a wonderful zoo.
When we got together, you see, the Ronnies were not famous. And this was, Ronnie Barker, I think, had done a lot more television than Ronnie Corbett, but what had happened was he was always somebody different, because he was a great character actor. And if you keep appearing, but always as somebody different, people don't remember you in the same way that if you're always the same person. So that was his slight, almost drawback, whereas Ronnie Corbett hadn't been on television a bit because he'd been out there on stage with audiences a great deal. But when they melded so well together, what I noticed was that Ronnie Corbett at moments would produce timing of absolute genius, whereas Ronnie Barker just seemed to be able to play any character that you wrote for him. I mean, he could just turn into anyone.
Now, let's go back to some roots. The birth of the RB, the Ronnie Barker monologue. Do you remember the first one you did?
John Cleese always used to do them. He did Headmasters. He was very funny and wonderful. But someone said that he was ill. I don't remember him being ill, but anyway, I remember Jimmy Gilbert saying, let Ronnie B do this one for a change. And then I seem to sort of get them every week.
This is a time for plain speaking. A time when we must face facts squarely, without shilly-shallying, without equivocation or beating about the bush. Now, I believe, as many of us believe, that we will, all of us, as we have before, and can, nay, must, once again, if we are to be, and make no mistake about it, we cannot afford not to be. And let us be quite clear about this. In the past few months, we have proved, without and beyond any doubt, that we do.
We did two seasons of the Frost Report, BBC, and then David left BBC, and he asked us to go with him to do sketches. John Cleese didn't want to go. At that time he thought he wasn't going to be an actor anymore. He was or a performer. He was going to be a writer, and he was going to be. So he didn't come. So it just left Ronnie and I, and that's when really we became the two Ronnies as opposed to the Frost Report team.
Did you suggest Josephine Tewson?
Yeah, well, not as a third member of the team, but we needed a woman. Always, often needed a woman.
Yes. Don't look at Terry like that.
He's never in want of a woman.
Well, we did met Josephine Tewson.
Josephine Tewson came and did some wonderful stuff with us, yes.
Here is a sketch with Messrs. Barker, Corbett, and Madame Josephine Tewson. Have a look at this and keep a little eye on Mr. Corbett. There was an upstart called Gerald Wiley. A man called Gerald Wiley started sending material in, some of which is very funny. The first one I remember was about a doctor's waiting room.
And this guy, Gerald Wiley, wrote terrific material. We were amazed because unsolicited material is rarely, terrific. But the first sketch came in with a stunning punchline, and the second sketch, a stunning punchline, and so on and so forth. And then towards Christmas, there was one Wiley sketch that didn't work. And as Ronnie Barker came off, he said to Ronnie Corbett, well, bloody Wiley really let us down there, didn't he? And so on. And so we still didn't know who Gerald Wiley was.
Well, we knew it must be a pro because the scripts came in such a form. Plainly, it was someone in the business. And pretty soon, because he wouldn't come in and... We wanted to encourage him. We couldn't get in contact with him, only via an agent. And pretty soon, we realised it was someone around. It was one of us. And the theories began to multiply.
And Ronnie Barker and I were in Real Inspector Hound by Tom Stoppard, who had said at one moment, jokingly, yeah, I'd love to write sketches. And I said, it's Tom Stoppard. Now, you wouldn't want Tom Stoppard to go up, would he, in the credits, so he's using Gerald Wiley, bet you. We took bets on it. We all had bets on who it was.
Ronnie said to me after we'd done the waiting room sketch, he said, you should really try to buy the rights of that waiting room sketch for your summer seasons. And I said, it's really very funny stuff for the summer season. And he said, why don't you, see what he'll sell it for? So Sonny Izal, who was looking after things for me then, I said, get on to the... Peter Reid was the agent who was sending the stuff in, so we felt he was a friend of Peter Reid. And Sonny came back the next day and said, he wants 250
£250.
I said £2,000 yesterday. I get all inflated. 250.
That's inflation, yes.
Yes, and then Ron said, well, it's far too much, 250. Tell him, 150. So the next day I went back with this, and then the message came from Gerald Wiley saying, you've done the sketch so beautifully, and his others, that he would like to give you the rights of this sketch in perpetuity for any live performance you would like to give. And I said to Anne, it's so sweet, really. I don't know who he is, but we'll get him some goblets, cut glass goblets, and engrave on GW, Gerald Wiley. But you say I was advised not to, or so you thought that Gerald Wiley would
I advised you not, he wouldn't like that.
But I delivered. So, and the end of the series, as you know, there was this Chinese banquet going to be given, at which it was announced Gerald Wiley would appear. He would present himself at the end. And we all sat down, as you know, you were all there, and there was an empty chair that we were expecting Frank Muir to turn up or Tom Stoppard. And during the afternoon, I have to say that Ronnie knocked on my dressing room door and said, I have to let you know that Gerald Wiley is me. So I did know a bit ahead of the Chinese, but we all sat down, and then Ronnie stood up and said, I have to let you know.
Yes, and it's me, folks.
I am Gerald Wiley.
I am Gerald Wiley, and David Frost said, I thought it was you.
Yes.
And there was a round of applause, then one writer from the back said, nobody likes a smart ass.
He's held his hand up.
Moving swiftly on and seamlessly. No, then came the parting. David Frost left LWT, correct?
Yes.
That's right.
The next chapter.
BAFTA employed David and his company to present a show around the awards, the BAFTA awards of that year. And during the middle of the show, they had a technical breakdown. And we all hung around sitting in the stalls of this theatre we were in. And I was sitting next to Paul Fox, who then was the controller of BBC One. And one of them came out, and I forget which one it was, probably Ronnie Barker, and came out and did a little bit. And then Ronnie Corbett joined him. And they entertained the public in the theatre for about a quarter of an hour. And at the end of a quarter of an hour, I turned to Paul and I said, how would you like to have Corbett and Barker on your network for the next 3 years? And he said to me, but they're tied to London Weekend Television. I said, and well, you know, they're to David Frost. And I said, I didn't ask what the problem was. I just asked you whether you would like to have the brief. He said, if you say so, that's fine by me. And so the next day I turned up in David's office, and I made an offer of a 3-year contract with 6 shows for Ronnie Barker and 6 shows for Ronnie Corbett, separate on their own, and 13 shows with them together in what became known as the two Ronnies.
What he didn't say, what he didn't know, in fact, at that time, that we'd just been given the sack from London Weekend. And we didn't tell him that. So he said, how about coming over to this side? And we said, well, make us an offer.
I mean, I have to say that, you know, all of these years when, you know, you're tenderly wondering what's going to happen next and is your career going to matter and are you going to take off, David Frost really completely changed my life.
Yeah,
and he
absolutely.
And put his money where his mouth was, got us on all these networks and got things going.
You're back at the BBC.
Yes.
I think the best possible person is over on our left, over to Terry Hughes. Tell me about those days, Terry.
Well, I was Bill Cotton, who was we've just been hearing from, who was head of entertainment then, called me into the office and said that he'd made a deal with the two Ronnies and would like me to produce and direct the first series. And Jimmy Gilbert, who had worked with them so successfully on Frost Report, was in an executive position situation to make sure I didn't screw it up, I guess.
We were obviously influenced a bit by the Frost Report. We had the news items, which David did on his own, and we thought, well, News at 10, two of them there, two presenters, why not try it here? And so we got the same sort of idea, which was a whole lot of writers who were contributing bits and pieces and little news items. And the best were chosen. And we topped and tailed the series with that.
We started the show, we did the first show, and amazingly, the format of the show, the very first show we did, is very much the format of the show that we did for the next 15 years. Yeah. It hardly changed. And the thing was always to remember that we were dealing with two personalities, two individual, distinct personalities. And the show was built up so they each had their own moment. They did sketches together, Ronnie in the chair, Ronnie with his monologue or whatever he was doing that week, and then coming together with the big musical item at the end, and the classic serial, as we used to call them.
And the two Ronnies were basically the underdogs. It was like society had turned on men, and they had this underground society where they secretly went off to do masculine things that were forbidden. But it was a kind of way they were just being plain regular guys, but in like, pinafores and aprons, and they'd have these underground meetings, forced to be like women during the day, but at night they'd sneak off and have pipes and cigars.
Oh, hello, Janet. Do come in.
Thanks.
Let me take your coat.
Oh. Well, how are you, Betty, old chap?
Oh, fine, Muscle Grumble. Sit down. Thank you. Now, nice cup of tea.
No, you've changed the curtains, haven't you?
Yes. Oh, before I forget, the Drama Club have been on, and they said, would I be in this year's production again? I said I would if you would. I presume you would, wouldn't you?
Oh, rather, yes. Wouldn't miss that for worlds. What is it?
Well, of course, they've made them change the titles of all the plays that have sexual connotations.
Oh, they're not doing Juno and the Peahen?
No.
Moby Dillis?
No, you remember the one that used to be called Little Women? Well, now it's called Little Men. You'd be good for the lead in that, actually.
Which part is that?
Arthur, the eldest daughter.
Oh, it gets so complicated. Betty, old chap, I'm in trouble.
In trouble? Don't tell me John's pregnant.
No.
Do you remember how difficult it was to get the news items? It was agony.
Oh yes, the news items were, no one writer wrote the news items. They were assigned to lots of people, and it was like I had to call around, and Peter, who was the script editor at the time, would have to call around the night before we were doing it and say, what have you got? Oh, they're in the typewriter, people would say. Oh, have you got them yet?
But first, here is the news. The pound had another good day yesterday. It rose sharply at 10 o'clock, had a light breakfast, and went for a stroll in the park. We've just heard today that British Rail have announced a new service for naughty couples going to Brighton. The Have It Away Day.
When I was producing the show, there'd be a producer, myself, Ian Davidson, who was the script editor. And we'd have all these news items come in on a sheet of paper. We didn't know who'd written them. They all had a code by them.
We had a sort of silly rule, didn't we? Like, with lots of silly rules during the week of the way the pattern, modus operandi.
Yes, it was very set.
News item. Now they were all numbered, and you had to do them all, and you all each started the top of a different page, and whatever you got to the bottom.
Because
and
when you'd read it, and you wanted to do that one.
That's right.
So if it was, it was heads, tails,
and you weren't allowed to laugh when you read it.
No.
Because it would give
noticed that, Ronnie.
Because it would give the joke an unfair bias. And then at the end, as David said, some of them had 2 ticks, and we all put to see. How many ticks have you got in that page?
But really, it's so difficult to write one-liners. I can't believe that we managed to write them. I couldn't write a quickie now to save my life.
No.
I couldn't have a quickie now.
a favourite joke that remains in my mind forever, and it's from way back in those days. It was David's, and he said, when Arthur Bottomley was the colonial secretary, Arthur Bottomley, on his return from Africa, said, of all the African leaders he met, one was Haile Selassie, two were fairly Selassie, and three were not Selassie.
But you still had your separate series. That still operated, didn't it? Having
well,
a separate
I think
series.
that was a great help to us, because we came back fresh to the two Ronnies, having gone away, our separate paths and come back again. Yeah, I used to love
Done
that.
something different.
Once in a while, you get the chance to welcome onto your own show somebody who's a particular favourite of your own. And tonight, I'm very fortunate to be able to introduce to you somebody...
Beef tea.
No, thank you. It's very kind of you, Mother. Very kind of you to think of that. But I'm just doing a television show at the moment, and
I'm sure Robin Day doesn't say no to a nice cup of beef tea when he's got a TV show
Mother,
to
I'm
do.
introducing the next item now. Just
You can't introduce the next item with your sheets all crooked.
Mother.
I don't expect Ronnie Barker didn't introduce his next item with his sheets all crooked.
Yes, but he wasn't in bed, Mother.
What a lovely lay it is. Oh, it does feel up to be good in the morning. Where is my lovely wife? Millicent! She surely can't be Bill instead, still in bed. Oh, I forgot. She's gone to have her pig worm. Her wig bird. But she should be back by now. Millicent!
Did you call, William?
Ah, good milling, Millicent. Happy anniversary, dear.
Nuit d'amour number 5. Oh, thank you, William.
I knew you needed a central of bot.
And now a roll on the drums and a sandwich on the piano. We come to the crucial subject. The two Ronnies, per se. The two Ronnies, the show. We've talked about the origin of it with Terry and the two names. You were always known as the two Ronnies, and now it became official. So let's have a wallow in the two Ronnies.
Thank you. Thank you. Good evening and welcome to the show. I must say it's very nice to be with you all, isn't it?
It is, it
and
is.
it's very nice to be with you.
Thank you, Ron.
We decided actually to call the series The Two Arthurs. But then we thought that wouldn't work because Ronnie Barker isn't called Arthur. So we decided to call a Ronnie and an Arthur. But then someone pointed out that I'm not called Arthur either. So we rather smartly thought up the title The Two Ronnies.
Thank you, Arthur.
Because I am not so much as others, you see,
you
I have the opportunity to stand back and view women from a distance, you see, as it were. Because I mean, you see, they're not like us, you know. No. They are not like us. They're not like human beings at all. They are completely different species. Different species, because they have these places, don't they?
Places?
Yeah, you know, you've heard of the erosive zones, haven't you?
Well, I've seen pictures of them on holiday brochures.
Erosive zones, that is the medical term for a place that a woman's got, you see, where if you touch it, she goes mad. Well, your Lil's got one of them.
Yeah, purse.
You continually come down. I mean, that it gets funnier the more you come down, the more...
All his composure intact, explaining it. I shall say this once, I shall not say that again. Here's something written by R.B. And the world of monologues. I remember, what was it, Day After Tomorrow's Kitchen?